Okay, cool. So we're back with our snazzy new render. You can see it's looking pretty good. This is definitely brighter than what we were seeing because we do not have the LUT applied yet. I'm going to go ahead and grab that right off of this other comp from the other lesson that we were doing. And you can see now with this vector field node, we have color space in set to Cineon and color space out set to sRGB. And we've got that LUT hooked in that'll crunch down some of those values so that it's matching a little bit better. You can see that if we flip back over to our actual image here, that we do have some very high values up in here, which is cool. You can see 2.5, 4.1, that kind of stuff. All right, so let's do another quick composite with this. So first things first, I'm going to do a very quick, let's just shuffle all these out. So we've got our GI, our lighting. Ooh, lots of them. Lighting, looks like that. Specular. And reflection. Cool. So if I was to line those guys up, move them over here. If I add these back together, theoretically speaking, oh, I forgot my self-illumination. So if I did this right, yes. So I'm flipping back and forth from one to the other, and you can see that my renders perfectly match, which is amazing because now I have the ability to go in and adjust these values however I want. All right, so let's do this. Get these light selects working now. So you can see, so first we've got our GI. Next is lighting. So I'm just going to bring that lighting over there. And then specular as well. And actually, we'll just probably delete those right now. And we'll just get these all set up. So now there's definitely scripts that you can find online to help you with this, to essentially shuffle out all of your passes so that you have them all lined up. But since I'm not going to be using any of these for this demo, I do need to go in and I need to go and separate each one individually. So I've got dome, light. First I'm going to do all the lighting. Here's pyramid 1, pyramid, I'm just going to copy them first. So pyramid 1, pyramid 2, oops, and that'll be pyramid 3. And then I've got one more for the sides light. Okay, cool. So here's pyramid 1. Sorry. Dome, pyramid 1, pyramid 2, light, pyramid 3, let me get that connected, pyramid 3 light, and lastly we've got our side light. So there's the sides, pyramid 3, 2, 1, and dome. So I can compare this to my original lighting pass. And if I was to take all of these and add them together, that and that are also identical. So you can see how this is starting to come together. So let's delete that lighting pass. And you can see now that we have our actual lighting completely separate, I could go in and do things like add a grade node on the sides light and maybe gamma down that a little bit, give it a little bit more contrast. This light right here is definitely a big one. This is kind of my main light source of the image, which is that pyramid light right in the foreground. Maybe I want to really crank that guy up a little bit more. I can now have the ability to do that completely separate from the other passes. Cool. So I'm going to add a little sticky note here so I know what's up. And the sticky note is going to be my lighting light selects. Now because I have all of these already copied out, I can just copy these 5 shuffles and paste them. And actually, let's give myself a little bit more room here. Cool. And let's go ahead and we'll paste those shuffles. We'll get them connected up to this dot right here. And we'll change all of these from light to spec. So there's our dome, pyramid 1, pyramid 2, pyramid 3, and last but not least, our sides. And now I can again merge these together with a plus. And now I have my result of my specular. So again, if I was to copy this grade node, and you can see I can now really crank up the specific passes as I want. So that's that. This is now my key light. I can really overcrank that specular if I want to. Maybe the sides light also. I want to really kind of just amp that up a little bit. So that's looking cool. And I've got my other 3 passes over here. So there's my GI, my reflection, and then my self-illumination. So all of these passes are all going to get added together as well. So I'm going to take these 3 and then my 2 pluses, and we'll merge those together. And that can get set to plus. And now I can still view this with the vector field. And now you can see maybe I overdid it a little bit on the specular. So we can dial that back down. I'm just kind of looking at my image while I'm doing it. I'm also, keep in mind, I am looking through the LUT while I'm doing this. I'm not looking up here. It's a little, the sRGB space is not really my working color space for this image. So I've got that vector field node turned on. Cool. So these are our lighting light selects. Paste another one over here. These are our specular. So there we go. Specular light selects. Cool. And we got our remaining passes. Now, if you look, my alpha is jacked up. You can see my alpha is essentially just whatever channel is going in there. So I do want to make sure that my alpha is coming down, back down the pipe, and getting copied back in there. So I can create a postage stamp node. This is kind of my preferred method so that I still have my one main file input here. I'm going to hide that input just so it's not too cluttered. If you don't want to hide the input, it's always totally fine to just create some dots and route that down and around. Just like that. And now we can use a copy node to copy that alpha right back in so that we get that nice clean alpha from the original source file. Cool. So this is going pretty well. So now I do also want to make sure that I am unpre-multiplying all of my passes. This unpre-multiply I'm going to set to all channels. And then after that new alpha gets placed in there, I'm going to pre-multiply all of my images or my now added together image so that you can see that any color correction that I may have had to do that could have inadvertently affected the alpha or affected this area of black is going to get trimmed out and taken care of. Awesome. So now we can toss a quick, we can just create a quick ramp. And we'll set I didn't actually set my settings to be 1080p. There we go. Cool. So let's just, really subtle, just gradient in the background. And this will be a nice kind of blue, pretty dark. Yikes. What is that color? No. You know what? Let's actually screw the gradient. What we're going to do is just grab a image of some sort. You can use some sort of stars. I'm going to pause the video and grab one. Cool. I found a photo. This is something that I took. So we can use it. And you guys are free to use it if you want, but please put a copyright on it. So just don't use it as a photo. You can grab the stars off of it though if you want. Just don't ever use it for any commercial purposes. So if we go in here, we can set this now to go underneath my actual image. So I can set this to under, and there we go. And you see I've got these trees in here, which kind of sucks, so, but I'm going to grade this a little bit, lower that black point down, a little bit of gamma, kind of gain the whole thing down a bit. Just get it fitting in that world as we need to. And you can see I could also even transform this up a little bit to get rid of those. Actually, I think we should just be able to transform this down. Oh yeah, there we go. Cool. So that's feeling pretty cool. We may want to hue shift that gamma a little bit till we get it maybe a little bit greener. Yeah, there we go. So see, now it's integrating nicely. Having those stars in the background like that help punch out the silhouettes of our objects. And then the only other thing that we are probably going to want to do here is get some sort of glow off of these objects. I'm going to do that before my LUT. And you can see we've got, values of 2.8, 4 point something. So Nuke's glow is really pretty terrible, but just for the sake of this, I'm just going to create one that's a couple of them put together. So we'll do one that's all set to effect only. And we'll make the tolerance 1. You can see now it's just all going to be glowing off of the main hotspots. And we'll do one that's about twice as big as that, so a size of 30. And then we'll do one that's doubling that again, so 60. So we're kind of creating, there's a plugin for Nuke called Exponential Glow that you guys can kind of dig up that essentially does this exact same thing. That works really well. So these guys can get merged together. See what that looks like here. Kind of weird. Not actually sure what's going on here. Oh, sorry. These are set to over. Want this to be plus. Cool. And now we can just kind of dial the intensities down until things are looking a little bit better. So we'll do a brightness, maybe a 0.5 on that main one. And we'll just keep dialing all these down. So cool. Okay. And kind of quick and dirty. And then we can set this to plus as well. And then the LUT goes over top of that. So you can see, now we can maybe bring that brighter one back in a little bit. There we go. And just kiss these in ever so slightly. And this guy here can get dialed down. And all of these can get really just kind of turned right down. Cool. So, and then we get that over top of that. And it's looking halfway decent. Getting there. Looking pretty cool. So, that's, the main idea here. We've got our main set our main render coming in. We've got some light selects set up for our specular, our lighting. The rest of our channels come in, added together, unpremultiplied and repremultiplied. Dots a little glow in there. And then we can place it on our background image. So these light selects are really amazing. I didn't, we're not really getting too nitty gritty with it, but you can definitely, hopefully you can already start seeing just how much fun and cool stuff we're able to do here. So let's get these all. Oops. And, if you really wanted to, you could go in and get full control over these passes and do some really amazing stuff. So that's it. And just a quick little introduction to the nuke side of the light selects. And we will continue to do a little bit more of the nuke building in the coming lessons. And we will get onto it. Cool, so picking up where we left off, I'd like to go in and utilizing our some of these other passes that we've created. So one of the main pieces to our compositing puzzle is going to be these RGB mats. So you can see I've got my RGB material and RGB object for these three guys right here. And we've also got a Z-depth pass that we want to talk about. And you can see our AO is in there. It's looking pretty good. Let's first talk about our RGB mats and how to utilize them in a multi-channel workflow. So with this situation that we're in, we have our shuffles coming down, and if you look and you flip through these channels, you can see that the full set of channels is actually trickling through everywhere. This does give you the ability to go in and actually control an individual channel, like a grade node or something like that, and utilize the mask for the RGB map. So if I look at this, the way this works, let's say on this reflection channel here, let's say on my reflection channel, I'm assuming there's a reflection on the ground, but I'm kind of missing out on it. I can kind of see one over there. So maybe I want to try brightening that reflection up a little bit. So I can create a grade node. I can use my mask. You can see here I get this massive list, but I can go to RGB. Actually, let me just check out my pass real quick here. So this is going to be the red channel. So I can go over to RGB matte red. And now you can see that this grade node is actually accepting that as a mask. And there you go. So you can see I've got this actually pretty cool amount of detail in through here in my reflection. And I'm able to only have that affect the ground because I've gone in and I've utilized the red channel of the RGB Mat 001 channel to control this alpha. And so you can really kind of pick apart your entire scene in this way, and you can go in and do all sorts of cool stuff. So specifically going in and changing around these passes is really kind of the place I would start. And then you can kind of go down and get into some other spots, So let's go ahead and add a little bit and utilize our Z-depth pass next to add a little bit of atmosphere to our world. So if I create a quick shuffle, I'm going to actually pull this out, because if I look at my Z-depth pass, it's going to just be depth right here. It's all solid color. You can see it's all float values as well. I could go in and I'm going to create a grade node next, and I can remap these float values by setting a white point and black point. So let's go ahead and set my white point to 5,000. Cool, way back there. And I'm actually going to do this. I want to make sure I'm on the unpremultiplied version, which I am. And I can now go in and I can utilize this as a mask to lift up my blacks a bit back here. And when I do this, I really want to look at it through the final output. You can see there is a little bit of haze back here. And so I just kind of want to match that. So I can create a grade node, connect that mask in there, and I can tell this to use the red channel of that now remapped depth pass. So any of them would really work. But I could lift this up a little bit. You can see, oh, I think I've got the opposite happening. Oh no, so you can see it's actually affecting my foreground quite a bit. So I've got this changing a ton of stuff. And now I can actually go in and adjust the range of my far point as well. So you can see I don't want any of this stuff in the foreground to be affected by that haze. I really want it to be isolated only in the background. So something like that is kind of cool. You can see how it's really just starting to fall away. And I could even try going in and lifting a color. Cool. So I just color picked right off of my background. And you can see how I'm able to pretty nicely just blend that in. I've got a little bit of a matte line I'm going to need to take care of, though. I'm not really sure where that's coming from right off the top of my head. Let's see if actually, I don't think I'm creating that matte line. That might just be because the edges are pretty sharp on these. Yeah, it's kind of in there already. But cool. So a little bit of atmosphere, something a little bit different. And you can utilize these depth passes all over the place. So you can see, I could utilize this depth to control a specific slice of this image if I wanted to, by going in and just remapping these values to wherever I wanted. The same way I remapped these values right here, I can also remap the point world pass that we created. So I can go in and grab that point world, and I can say, you know what, for whatever reason, I want to just control the Y. Maybe I just want to make it feel like there's a little bit of a gradient running up the sides of this, object right here. So I'm going to filter out only the green channel on my shuffle. So I've isolated the Y. You can see it's going up, starting at -2, -3, all the way up to the top of this, which is about at 340. So if I set my black point, we'll just set my black point to 0, my white point to 340. Actually, let's do the opposite. So let's set my black point to 340 and my white point to 0. You can see that I can create a really nice gradient just running up the sides of these objects. So let's raise that white point up. Maybe we'll do 50. And now let's lower that black point back down. Something right in there. Maybe we can lower that black point as well. Cool. And now I can go in and actually, I'm going to pull in the mask of my green channel of the RGB matte from the, let's see which one it was. So yeah, green channel of RGB matte 001. And so I do need to actually shuffle that out as well. So I'm going to set this to be my RGB matte 001. I'm going to isolate the green channel. Cool. And now I can go in and I can use a merge node set to mask. And I've gone in and created myself a really nice alpha. And maybe I don't really know how, it's always confusing how you want to organize. I don't want to get too dot crazy here. All right, so something like that. You can see that we've got our alpha going in and down to mask this out. And now I can go in and really easily control that gradient running up and down these guys, which is pretty cool. And last but not least, I could create a grade node to go in. And whoop, what happened up here? Oh, so when I was color picking, I screwed up my value on my lift, so I need to go in and somewhere right in there. Something that looks cool. Actually looks better, a little darker. Something right in there. That's perfect. And let's turn off that color pick and turn off my pixel selection. So back to where we were. I've got my grade node here, and I've got my alpha ready to go. And so now on these guys here, I could I could do whatever. I could warm them up. I don't know. And also, just so you can see, I do want to not, I don't want to use my alpha. I actually want to use the luminance. So I'm looking at my red channel here, not my alpha. And there we go. So you can see, just though it's in its most extreme form, I can actually start to modify this in ways that I didn't even have in the CG. So I kind of like having a little bit of greenish warmth or something, running up the side of this, a kind of different color, and I can change this however I want. It's almost just like it's just a sort of like side projection, something like that. You can see if I flip that off and on. It's a subtle change, but it's pretty cool. Just utilizing that point world in a different way that may not have thought of before. Wonderful. So let's keep building down on this a little bit. And after our pre-multiply, but before our glow would be the spot where I can utilize my depth pass to run some depth of field in this if I wanted to. So because I ran that z-depth, the depth as a V-Ray, just the built-in depth, that runs the depth channel into the, even though it was called z-depth on the Maya side, it does put it into the actual depth channel in your EXR, so Nuke can read it. So I'm going to create a ZD focus node. And the ZD focus, right off the bat's going to be a little bit weird. But we can start playing around with it. So let's go ahead and, using this, I can say, let's grab my focal point. I'm going to put it on that guy right there. So immediately, you can see had a nuke failure. Anyways, we're just picking up. So I can move this focal point around on my ZD focus node. You can see that it's actually automatically grabbing that float value for me, which is pretty awesome. And because this scene is a much larger scale, I don't really want to have the depth of the focus fall off in this really extreme way like that. I can just have it go in, and I can say my output, I can do my focal plane setup. I can really raise up that depth of field slider so that my focal region is actually pretty large. And this is a very wide angle lens, so I really don't want my maximum to be very high. Maybe my maximum can be 5. And then let me switch this back to results. I can actually see what I'm doing. And my size, maybe we just try 2. Maybe we need to lower that maximum. It does appear that it's getting its maximum. And you can see it's really just like a single pixel blur going back in there. And I do feel like so you can see I screwed up my alpha here. You can see I'm getting these nasty edges. I want to make sure that all of this color correction stuff happens before my copy. Kind of broke my own rule here. So we always want to put in this clean alpha and then pre-multiply. So you can see now I've got my ZD focus going in, and then the image is going behind that. So we actually still got some matte lines we'll have to figure out eventually. Seems like that's that doesn't seem totally right. Maybe I'm nitpicking, but we'll get it figured out eventually. Just to continue moving forward, you can see the ZD focus is really just, I'm using it very subtly, just essentially doing a pixel or so blur on my image, which is cool. You can see all of this stuff still staying pretty sharp, but that area in the background is just fading off a little tiny bit. Another thing you can try, you can always play with this. You can set your math result to be depth. And if I crank this up a little bit more, oops, sorry, not the size. Set that to 5. Set our maximum to 10 again. You can see what that starts doing. So if I switch this to far equals 0 again, it's just kind of different. And then depth. Oh, not that one. And there's also direct, which is obviously not what I want. So cool. Seems like it's working pretty good. You can see if I flip that off and on, it is pushing it out of focus. It's doing something. Because it's such a wide angle, I don't necessarily think it's a good idea. I kind of like having the stars really sharp like this. So I am going to get rid of it, but just wanted to show you that it does directly connect in. That Vray depth pass will connect in directly to the new ZD focus node. Just want to let you guys know I did figure out, I said that I'd fix it later, and I did. The matte line that I was getting, that nasty black edge, was simply because the alpha was getting added up in all of these glows. And you can see there's alpha values that are pretty high, and then it gets added on top. On that merge node, just had to make sure that the alpha was turned off on the output so that it wasn't affecting it, and it was just using the original alpha. You can see if I go down at the end of my image here, on that merge, if I turn it back on, I get that nasty matte line. Turn it off, works okay. Probably make the ZD focus work a little bit better as well. Yeah, totally. You can see it's significantly better. So if I go in here, my focal point, crank up that depth of field slider to increase the range of that focus, and then maybe we'll lower that size down to about 2 and the maximum, something around in there. Maybe bring the size up to 4 so it reaches that maximum faster. It's kind of an interesting look right there. I wouldn't really want that out of focus though, so maybe I do want to bring my size back down to 2 and also potentially really increase that depth of field slider. So that's just slightly out of focus, that's a little bit more, and then that focus point's there. And then if I wanted to, I could add a defocus on my stars and just push them out of focus by a pixel so that it matches with that look there. And that's that correction. Makes the ZD focus look a little bit better. I'm still actually going to go back and keep it nice and sharp because the stars look nice when they're nice and sharp and looking pretty cool. So I'll leave these disabled, and this nuke script will be in with the project files. As far as the rest of our channels go, you can see just by hopefully the way we utilize the RGB mat, you can definitely see how you could utilize the noise as well. The velocity and the the velocity, if we had it, would be run directly into a channel so that you could, I'll just connect it even though we don't have motion in this image, just so you know. This would again be done after that pre-multiply. You could say, you can use the vector blur node, which is optimized very well for Vray's velocity pass, and you can just tell it which channel your velocity is coming from. And then I set this method to forward, and I set my alpha and turn my alpha to be RGBA.alpha. And that's it. And it will properly go in and blur the alpha and then multiply against it in a forward fashion. And then if it seals too intense, you can usually set this down to like 0.5. And that's it for the if you've got motion in your seed. So hopefully it gives you a little bit of an idea of how these passes come together, and you can utilize them in all sorts of awesome ways. And I think that there's a massive amount of creativity that gets created or embraced on the compositing end. You can go in and really, you can see, if I look at my image, let me grab my LUT so that's a fair comparison here. Just that being what kicked out of Maya to this at the very end. And the background really helps sell it, but you can just really get in there and overcrank this stuff and plow away at it and get it feeling pretty nice and doing something really beautiful. So enjoy your V-Ray render elements, and we will move on forward here.